Alright. I'm about halfway done ordering orbats for Germany. The starting point, March 7th, 1936. Improved, but also still flawed due to the build times defined for the battle class ships. Tirpitz battleship anyway. So is the Scharnhorst. But that's the maximum number. Well, there again, it may have worked. It says it's got 559 days remaining in the build, but it's not currently building. So that may have went through. I put in the orbats for the Tirpitz to require 1120 days prior to its launch from the start date of March 7th, 1936, which would put it on its accurate date of launch in 1939, as I also did with the Bismarck. See, now I've got two Bismarck class ships with two different names, Tirpitz and the Bismarck. Bismarck launched a couple months before the Tirpitz. The Tirpitz was slightly larger, but the same class. It was modified, improved. I have all of the major capital ships programmed in, so that way what this does is, the reason why I did this is, like I stated before, so that I can include specific names for the ships. Otherwise this would be called Capital Bismarck because it's a Bismarck class, and this would also be called Capital Bismarck because it's a Bismarck class. Now that I have them programmed in the Orbat file with the defined build time, which I don't know if it worked yet or not, now they both have their respective titles in place, programmed into the game. Oop. That happens like once every 3 months. I didn't exit out, the game did that. It's a glitch. It's not really a glitch, it's just a file reading error that occurs once every blue moon. But in any case, that's all good. So maybe that will take the full 1120 days, maybe it won't. Regardless, it's better than it was before because now I have a Bismarck and a Tirpitz, and even if I get it in 559 days, it's over a year early, but it's not going to change the game to the point where it would be like putting the British Navy at a huge disadvantage. I mean, it would certainly help having the Tirpitz and the Bismarck available in 1939, but I would probably grab them and send them over here out of the action just to keep things historically balanced when I'm playing. There again, I'm lying. If I am playing the game and I find it that they will be useful in battle, I'll use them in 1939. But that's if. Oh, they would be complete in time anyway. What the hell am I talking about? It's not gonna change the price of tea in China, whether I get them early or on time. It's gonna be the same result. I'm still gonna have them both available when the war starts with Britain. And as I noted earlier, I got all my petroleum industries allocated and implemented. Various oil fields, I kind of fit them in because I don't want to take up too many terrain hexes. I want the terrain to be visible. It's about more than halfway done now as far as adjusting terrain heights and opacities and whatnot. It's still not done, but it takes a very long time, and sometimes it gets very frustrating because it's a lot of opening and closing and opening and closing and opening and making adjustments that sometimes, it's like one of those things where even though you know what you're doing, there's still a lot to do and a lot to mentally grasp while you're doing it. And it can become simply stated frustrating, just like I said earlier. But it's getting better and better and better and better every time I work on it. I improve it slightly more so than it was before. I'm working on hills. This is one that's I was talking about frustrating. They're almost there. Not only do I have to adjust them so they actually look like hills on the map, but I have to adjust them accordingly within that. So these hills look appropriate next to these hills, to these hills, to these hills. I want to bring down the transport mesh for the hills a little bit. I still want it to be kind of rough at the bottom, but I don't want it to create like that cliff edge effect so much. So I'm going to bring the top height down and leave the bottom where the mesh becomes visible the same. I kind of like where it's at the bottom. My grassy hills. Hills, you want them to be more detailed and bright at the top, obviously, and darker and duller. Not as clarified. Not as much clarity at the bottom end. So it creates that fading, dipping, darkened effect. Gives it that three-dimensional, realistic viewing perspective. I don't know. I'm not very good at discussing things like that in detail, explaining things like that in detail on a whim. So I'm just going to leave that explanation as it is and continue with this video. You see how this is bright at the front facing and darker at the back and the bottom. Gives that hill effect. Light forests are a little dark, but I'm overall pretty happy with them. This is Donbass region. These are all coal mines. I have certain light forest hills and certain plains hills meshes that are kind of that earthy tone, and I am placing them all in coal-based regions. So not only do you have the option of viewing where all the coal deposits are on the planet by selecting the overlay filter, you also have the advantage of there's probably coal there because that seems to be the pattern where coal exists in the earth. The ground tends to look like that. So kind of going with that. Romania. Swamps are complicated because the oceans are still not visible and they tend to eat away at the coast. I got that pretty much under control. by bringing all the opposite meshes that aren't oceans lower in their visual where they appear on the mesh scale, and like adjusting probably 50 different variables for each mesh to make it do that. There's also invisible pieces of coastline at various points where there's not ports, because if you put a piece of coastline in front of a port, the ships are all going to blow up when they leave the port. So you got to be very meticulous and also very mindful of where you place pieces of coastline, because they also provide beaching advantage to you know, any enemy that's trying to attack you. So it wouldn't really make sense for me to put coastlines in front of the White Cliffs of Dover, because you're not going to have guys in mass landing at the White Cliffs of Dover and just overwhelming the beachhead without going unnoticed and being slaughtered. So, I mean, like, it's not something that would be realistic, so I can't put coastlines there, so I have to draw on the map the White Cliffs of Dover. I have no idea what that's called, but I think it's really pretty, and I noticed it on somebody else's, it wasn't a game formatted topographical map. It was an exaggerated terrain relief map of the Earth. It looks really pretty, and what exaggerated is it makes like things like mountain ranges like ridiculously high, so that the geographic feature stands out as a prominent or key feature that defines that region's known appearance. This is one of those features that I noticed on one of those maps, and so I implemented it into my map, and it's pretty cool. I like how it looks, and it also has a function. I mean, that's terrain that is defined as a terrain element, and it will affect everything in the game: supply, transport, combat, etc., 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 all the way on down the pipeline. We did the infrastructure in Germany, road network. This is the Autobahn road map, complete probably through like 1970s, 80s. Not all of this was in existence in 1936, but most of it was. So I just went ahead and did the whole thing, because I don't want to have files in there that conflict with me playing. I don't want roads to just start building when I'm in control of Germany. That's fine for every other country that I'm not playing as, because I'm not going to swap out during the game in 1970 because Russia built a railroad, over here in 1970. I'm not going to switch playing positions to make that happen manually. I just program it in there for them. And if I ever decide to play as Russia, I can always make that file do not do with human. But I doubt I'll ever play World War II as anybody besides Germany. I've explained that several times over. This is just who I like to play as. So I don't do them kind of files for Germany. And that's where I'm at. And today was a nice, lovely, and relaxing day full of reading, research, and data implementing. That's what I like to do. Love Jack.